Welcome back. Now moving on to our first segment for today. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi expected the assets of the new administrative capital company with the implementation of the plan to put it on the stock exchange during the next 2 years would exceed the level of 3 to 4 trillion pounds. Well, we're going to discuss this and other important economic issues with our guest for today, Dr. Youmn Hmaki, Professor of Economics at Shams University. Doctor, first of all, good morning.
Good morning.
So, first of all, let's start by talking about the stock exchange and the impact of this important decision.
Actually, it's a very good signal for the economic advancement in Egypt and the role of the stock market, since we have a lot of discussions lately about the role of government, to how extent the private sector is taking its momentum for achieving economic development. And actually, specifically after COVID-19, the private sector in Egypt has been affected seriously by the crisis. And from here it comes the importance that the government is trying to declare messages regarding that we are taking care of the private sector. We need the private sector to take the lead in our economic development, especially with the mega projects that have been done. Part of this, what you have mentioned, is about the administrative capital, the new administrative capital, which is actually managed by a company. This company is a very large company with assets approaching 4 trillion Egyptian pounds. And full of opportunities. Why? Because they started with a very mega project on international standards, and from here it comes that nowadays, if you are going to start with having these assets in the stock market, and as the president declared, we are going to start by 100 billion Egyptian pound. This is quite important because the cost and the expenditure for this administrative capital has been completely out of our budget, which means that our budget, you are not going to find any expenditure regarding the administrative capital in the Egyptian budget. It's all financed by itself, self-financing, which means that we have a land, the government is starting by having, the infrastructure on a very important level, and from here it comes that, all investors are buying, land for development and so on. So you are going to have a revenue from this, and this is making the balance. And from here it comes that the assets of this company arrive to 4 trillion Egyptian pounds. When you address this large amount into the stock market, it means that this is quite important for our stock market, since our stock market is still, dominated by very few companies, and it's not actually, this is preventing the stock market from playing its significant role to finance development in Egypt. And by having these investments in the stock market, you are going to have a diversification in the stock market. You are going to have assets. You are going to attract, investors in such stock market. So I believe this is a very important step to be taken to declare, the tendency of the government to support the private sector.
I believe that usually everyone is monitoring and observing what is going on in Egypt, because this delivers directly and indirect messages as well.
Yes.
If I'm going to move also something that I believe this is, of course, going to be parallel with this, talking about travel to recruit employment abroad.
Yes.
So this draft or this decision to establish the Egyptian Joint Stock Company to recruit workers inside and outside the country definitely also will be very, very important during this critical period of time.
Of course, Nashwa, I agree with you. And we have to concentrate on the main obstacles preventing Egypt from achieving significant economic growth, because nowadays Egypt, after the mega project, is extending opportunities of investment all over Egypt. We used to live in just 5% of the surface of Egypt. Nowadays, with mega project in Sinai, in Upper Egypt, and so on, you have millions of opportunities, profitable opportunities, and Egypt is full of unexploited resources. So this is opening the door for very profitable investment. But still, we have to admit that still we have some obstacles that may prevent foreign direct investment from coming, and this is what we are trying to do in order to address such obstacles properly, so that to convince foreign direct investment and even Egyptian investors that are having very good capabilities for expansion. We have to, convince those investors regarding the, environment for investment in Egypt, that we are moving into a better situation. We have indices to prove that. We have the Doing Business Index and the Competitiveness Index. And regarding the, participation of the government in a new company, this company aiming to, be directed to achieve more flexibility in the labor market. Nashwa, that we have a severe problems regarding our labor market. Still, there is, no balance between the supply and demand in labor market. In Egypt, you can find a lot of youth that are looking for opportunities of job, and they cannot find opportunities of job. Meanwhile, and at the same level, you can have investors, a lot of investors that are looking for the right employment, which means that employment capable to have the productivity of employment, to how extent they are skillful enough to, perform on a good way. And from here it comes that these companies may play a significant role to achieve such flexibility, which means that this company, is going to quite dedicate the effort towards directing youth into upgrading their skills, as well as having opportunities of job in different countries around us. Specifically nowadays, Egypt gained the momentum and experience in infrastructure project, and due to that we trained a lot of our workers and so on. We have large companies that can be considered as multinationals. They are working in Africa, in Arab countries. Nowadays, with restructuring we need a mega project for reconstruction in for example, Libya, in Sudan, in different countries, Arab countries, as well as African countries. So you have a very good opportunity to direct those who are looking for opportunities of job towards having such opportunities in these countries. So onshore and offshore, employment is going to be the main aim of this company, and I believe this is quite important for Egypt, and it's going to address the problem of unemployment, because if you don't have a flexibility in the labor market, with this you are going to have a high rate of unemployment.
Doctor, let me move also to something related. As long as we are talking about human capital, we have the soft fund from Germany talking about the developments and upgrading different sectors, one of which, of course, is training and vocational training and education. How do you see, or how important is it going again in parallel with everything? We always say that in Egypt nowadays we can see projects taking place parallel to each other. Yes. Each one is serving the other.
Of course, this kind of foreign aid, because I used to have this studies during being a membership in Shura Council several years ago. You know, it needs a very sophisticated system of monitoring and evaluation. Since, you know, this foreign aid should have a goal and action plan and to be monitored quite well. Because for most of the reasons, our studies proved that there was a leak for such foreign aid towards achieving their goals. But when we talk about the importance of vocational training and to how extent this is going to serve our economic planning, I believe this is quite important. And like you mentioned, it goes quite well with the flexibility of labor market, because as I have mentioned, you know, you can find a lot of our factories in different industrial areas in Egypt. They are looking for trained workers they cannot find, and this is, you know, completely detrimental, specifically when you are trying nowadays to penetrate international markets. So you need to upgrade your technology for quality, as well as having trained workers to cope with such technology. And from here it comes the importance how to coach your youth. The most you know, important you know, area to do that is technical education and vocational training. And from here it comes the importance to how extent we can address our youth in all areas that you can do, in everywhere, even if you can go to the youth clubs, you know, to have this campaign of awareness for the youth. If you are going to work hard, if you are going to be trained, you are going to find an opportunity of jobs that is going to be quite remunerable for you. This can improve the quality of life you are living in. And this is actually a very important way to be done to cope with the you know, the demand in the labor market, either it is internal or external. Our youth actually are in deep need to know the opportunities opened for them. And if you dedicate, you know, some of this foreign aid towards an awareness campaign, as well as upgrading you know, the capacity of the training centers and upgrading the situation in our technical schools, I believe these three dimensions, if you can succeed to address them on a parallel ways, this can help a lot to you know, encourage our youth, and having more and more you know, youth to come and to ask for more training and opportunities of job. And this can be a cornerstone towards improving the competitiveness in our industrial sector.
If I'm talking about the Justice City and the construction plan that was reviewed by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, giving them much attention and care for this important project taking place in the new administrative capital. Again, as we have just mentioned, talking about, we have messages every single minute. We have messages to the whole world about Egypt and about the achievements taking place. So if I'm talking about the Justice City to be held in the new administrative capital, for example.
This is a very important message. Why? Because we are trying to deliver a very important message in our economic developmental plan, which is that Egypt is going to enhance and support the superiority of law. This is quite important. Why? Because we used to have, you know, several problems regarding the superiority of law in Egypt. Starting from the period of President al-Sisi, the messages have been completely changed. Why? Because the messages regarding those who are going to to be outlawed, how they are going to be treated regarding using land in illegal ways. All people that have their lands, they have to be adapted by the new regulations and laws. So from here, the messages are going to be that those who are going to, to be out of the regulations, they are going to be punished seriously. And nowadays, this is the country in which the superiority of law is going to be completely respected. And this is a very important message when you talk about the environment for investments. When you deliver this message internationally, it's a very important message that for those foreign investors that would like to find opportunities of job. And beside what I have just mentioned regarding that Egypt is a land of opportunities for profitable investment, I believe that being guaranteed regarding the superiority of law is a very important point to be addressed.
Right, Doctor, allow me to move into a quick break, then we will be back.
المسافة بين الحلم والحقيقة مجرد خطوة. على أرض مصر بنحقق أحلامنا. بعاصمة إدارية جديدة هتغير الخريطة السكانية وخريطة الاستثمار في مصر. مشروع عملاق بيتم تنفيذه على مساحة 170 ألف فدان، بيوفر أسلوب حياة أفضل. العاصمة الإدارية الجديدة هي حل مناسب وعملي للنمو الثقافي والسكاني، وبترحب بالمواطنين من كل المستويات في مكان ذكي بيواكب أحدث مستويات المعيشة والتكنولوجيا على مستوى العالم. منطقة اقتصادية مجهزة ومتنوعة، جاهزة لاستقبال 6 مليون مواطن. مصر بتتغير. مصر تطور مستمر.
Welcome back. And Doctor, talking about, yes, we talked about, of course, the projects taking place, about the stock exchange and all the messages delivered by Egypt to the whole world. Now talking about investors, if we are going to attract foreign investors and local investors, if I'm talking about the foreign investors, for example, yes, if we're talking about potentialities, what are they going, or what are they attracted towards in Egypt?
Fortunately, nowadays the figures regarding foreign direct investment is doing well in Egypt. After COVID-19, Egypt witnessed a deterioration of foreign direct investment arrived to 3.6 billion for the last year. This is quite minimal compared to Egypt reached sometimes 13 billion, which is a significant decrease. Nowadays, when we address all obstacles confronting foreign direct investment, part of this are dealing with taxation. Nowadays, we are trying to improve the system of taxation to have a digital system for taxation, improving transparency. This is quite important. Besides, another point which proved to be quite significant, dealing with customs union. We have severe problems regarding that, and nowadays we are going to inaugurate a new system for addressing customs to facilitate, customs and to reduce the period for those who are importing or exporting. And this is quite important since Egypt is nowadays having a goal of $100 billion as export. So all these efforts that are done in Egypt can prove that Egypt is a land of opportunity nowadays. You can see that, Nashwa, when you find to how extent, for me as an economist, I can see that Egypt is quite promising for several industries, like the food industry. Egypt has achieved significant progress regarding the competitiveness of the food industry. There are very small signals that you can refer to, even you as a consumer. Nowadays, when you go to a supermarket to buy chocolates or cookies or so on, you are going to buy the Egyptian one, even if you can find the imported, and even if the price is not, there is no price differentiation. Since you are choosing the Egyptian product, despite that there is a competition, this is a very good signal to prove that Egypt is doing quite well.
The quality.
Yes, the quality, improving the quality. And nowadays you are going to find parallel to that, our export of food industry is increasing significantly. So this is a very good sign, a very important potential for investors to come. Specifically when this is coping with improving the capability and the capacity for the agriculture sector, because there is a very important relationship between the food industry and the agriculture sector, since most of raw materials for food industry coming from the agriculture sector. So this is from one perspective. From another, different now regarding medical services. Nowadays, Egypt is becoming a very important place to attract investment in, medicines, the industry of medicines, of supplements, and as well as, and we are talking about COVID-19, as well as building hospitals and
vaccinations.
Yes, all this nowadays becoming very important, since we have the human resources to cope with that. Egypt is having really quite an important, capital investment in human resources that are nowadays Europe trying to attract our doctors and nurses and so on, and a large part of our doctors can have nowadays opportunities in Europe, specifically after COVID. So this is giving to you the message that Egypt nowadays is becoming integrated into the world economy by benefiting from opportunities, as well as trying to avoid the negative effects of such globalization, specifically after COVID-19. But we need to work harder than that. We need to prepare ourselves. We need to upgrade our capabilities, so that we can reduce the negative effect and maximize the positive effect.
Right, Dr. Youmn Hmaki, Professor of Economics at Shams University. Always a pleasure having you with us on the show. Right, moving on to a quick break, then we'll be back.